But to shift things in a little bit of a different direction, we are joined here by our good friend TMBS Crew, one of the co-hosts of Jackman's Weekends, along with many, many other things, Nando Vila, to talk about this Super League fiasco. How's it going, brother?
Doing well, doing well. How you guys doing over here?
Not too bad.
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Doing all
I'm
right?
I'm glad
Nice.
the Super League. I mean, I saw you guys. I didn't. For me, I'm a American sports fan. Wasn't quite sure the ramifications of this. Felt very sad for both of you guys in the group message because of I think the what was going on here. And I'm glad that it turned out in a way that we can all sort of laugh about it now.
Yeah, it's funny because when you guys asked me to come on, was that when I was feeling like in the dumps? This was on Monday, right? When you guys asked me to go on, like, hey, maybe come in. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go on. And then like we're just like as we're in the group chat, all of a sudden the news starts breaking, like everything starts collapsing, and I'm like, all of a sudden my mood just completely shifted, and I was like, oh my god, this is maybe the most fun news story in recent memory. I was having a blast.
Well, it's definitely a fascinating story, and I'm going to get you to sort of break down the history. But for folks who aren't familiar, basically the Euros have been sitting on a dynasty for a very long time of a very popular sports product. But it's a product that has been missing out on American, innovation, the
Yeah.
brilliance that could come with U.S. marketing, and we try to share our gift with the world and create a super league, so the Europeans could enjoy a product much like the NBA and the NFL, which we all love so dearly.
Yes.
But the Europeans really weren't too happy to see the Americans and international capital really come in and try to shift their game.
It's a funny kind of irony that America, hyper capitalist, more is like, it's just, capitalism, meritocracy at all costs, blah blah blah, has its model of sports governance, which is based off of like you can't lose really,
Mhm.
and they have salary caps and things like that, whereas the European, social democratic Europe, has much more freewheeling sports culture in which like, if you lose and do poorly, you go down to the
You're
second
done.
division. Yeah, and if you don't qualify in the top four in one of the big leagues, you don't make the Champions League, which is where you make all the money in European soccer. So it really is much more meritocratic. Whereas the greedy capitalists of America, they don't believe in competition as much as the social democratic Europeans do.
No, it's very true, and it is so funny to see the shift, especially actually now that the NBA is trying to look to do more European style, like mid-season competition and tournaments and stuff like that. But let's not get tied up. And obviously, for all the pundits out there, like I love soccer. I'm joking. I think the Super League was a bad thing, but
Can
can
I
you?
just can
Yeah.
I just from an outsider's perspective, because I do think I'm somebody who enjoys watching soccer when it's on. I
Mhm.
love like especially when the stars rise up. Like Neymar, for instance, is a guy like I love enjoy FIFA. I love all that stuff. And as an American fan, it does seem like I guess playing devil's advocate, like why isn't there
Yeah.
an NBA of soccer?
Well, because in Europe, and really all over the world, soccer teams are not like American teams in that American teams are called franchises and they move around. They like Bernie's book, like the first chapter is him like yelling about how the Brooklyn Dodgers went to Los Angeles, and
That was like his
so
political awakening too, in
it
a certain
was,
sense.
yeah. He was like, "This is bullshit. This is bullshit. The Brooklyn Dodgers belong in Brooklyn." But Americans realize very quickly that if they can turn teams into consumer brands, right, that they can extract more profit off of them. But in soccer, both in Europe and in South America and wherever like there's a long soccer tradition, the teams never did that. They became kind of hubs of the local communities. They became kind of an organic outgrowth of these towns and cities and
Mhm.
often neighborhoods. And when soccer kind of became a globalized product starting in the late 90s, but really turbocharged with the popularity of the FIFA video game. As you said, Matt, you like soccer because you like playing FIFA. I mean, that's true of a lot of people around the world. They then packaged that kind of local sentiment as a consumer product. For example, Barcelona very famously is kind of the traditional club tied to Catalan nationalism, and they have a slogan which is "Més que un club," more than a club, because it's more than a club. It's not just some fucking team that you like. It's like, you know, we stood up to the dictatorship and we stood up for Catalan identity when Franco was trying to suppress us and things like that. And that concept is commodified and sold to fans in America and in all over the world. Same likewise with a team like Liverpool, which has like maybe the most famously rabid fan base, like Anfield and "You'll Never Walk Alone," and like the videos of the fans singing the "You'll Never Walk Alone" in the stadium. That is part of the appeal. So that's why, like, you Americans, Matt, will never understand, because there isn't that level of connection to the Carolina Panthers, you know, or the Texas Rangers. Like, just pick any random team, even like the most storied teams like the New York Yankees. Okay, maybe the Red Sox in Boston have a real kind of connection, like a real kind of connection that goes beyond just you know, just the, oh, I'm a fan of this team. It's like something deeper.
Yeah.
But imagine that to all of every single club is like that in Europe.
Yeah, and I think like it's almost like that the European, that seems more natural actually. America seems to have really like got it out of whack here, because I'm thinking of back to a book I read about Satchel Paige crossing the color line first in North Dakota, playing for baseball teams who literally like paid for by the state, like municipally owned baseball teams, just all sorts of different leagues across, and then finally you get MLB consolidated its monopoly over all of that, right? But that was like a huge event for the community. It was, and I love, you know, big baseball games and giant stadiums, but it when you could like drive to the town next door and like see people there, and I don't know, it might be too romantic about it.
Speaking of Bernie, like, it's funny that like he's on this crusade to save the minor league system in baseball. Like, he's the only, like, it's like his little hobby horse. I can guarantee you, like, in his meetings, like with his staff, they're like, Bernie's like, what are we doing to save the AA and AAA baseball leagues?
Yes.
And his staff is looking at him like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, no, we got to put out a policy proposal to save, you know.
But I gotta say, like,
but he understands that it's.
Yeah. That's why he does well in rural America. Because in North Dakota, when I lived in North Dakota, it's like you might occasionally go to a Twins game or something like that. But all the like sort of sports advertised you are, it's the local like AAA team or a minor league basketball team or arena football league team, right? Like that stuff actually, sports does naturally bring people together. And you know, it's just when it's like bastardized by capital that it becomes something alien.
Yeah, and I would say like the only thing that comes close, and I've never lived in Europe, but just from my understanding, is like maybe college football in the South.
Yeah.
But it's not even as deeply rooted, because a lot of that actually has to do with like alumni, and it's not, you know, I don't know, it's not as deeply rooted as like being somebody from Manchester.
Yeah, Liverpool is the team of the working class in Liverpool. They are the team of the dock workers. They are the team of, you know, that sort of shipping base of the UK. Like and ditto, like for Atletico Madrid, which is the other team in Madrid, right? I'm a Real Madrid fan. But the other team in Madrid, which was also invited to the Super League, was this team, Atletico Madrid. And they're considered like the working class team in Madrid. Like if you're a rich fancy lad, you support Real Madrid. If you're a working class kid from like the outer boroughs, you support Atletico Madrid. Like it's tied to something more. But you're right to point out the college football, like the Super League is as if college teams, you know, Alabama and USC and Michigan and Texas all realize like, hey, why are we playing all these bum ass teams every Saturday? If we just played each other every Saturday, every single Saturday was UT versus USC
Yeah.
or Alabama versus Michigan or Notre Dame or whatever. Like if every single game was a big deal, then we would get more ratings, we would get more things, we could sell more advertising, all that stuff. But you would the doing that, sort of removing those big teams from their conferences, would kill all those other schools. I mean, that's the sort of way to understand it. Obviously, college football is evil, and soccer in many ways is also evil. But what they were proposing was even more evil. Like it would have just completely destroyed the livelihoods of every single other team that wasn't invited into the Super League. They would have been relegated to complete and total irrelevance.
And like, let's get to this story a little bit. I will say, funnily enough, a bunch of the like college football writers were trying to propose a Super League just as like a thought experiment, which got me very scared. But anyways, I want to talk about the timeline of the Super League in a second. But could you give us just right now? It's Thursday, April 22. What is the state of the Super League?
So the state of the Super League is that it's technically on standby. It's on hold. So the majority of the clubs that were in the Super League have pulled out officially. Still, Barcelona and Madrid I think are still the only ones who are technically still in it. I mean, but that's ridiculous. Obviously, you can't have a league with two teams. The remaining issues is that all these teams signed some sort of binding contract, and there's some sort of penalty that goes with leaving the Super League before it starts. But the penalty, which no one knew, no one's seen any of this. Like all of this was kind of done in secret. The rumors are coming out that the penalty is not even that much. It's like 9 million euros, which is, for these teams is very, not a big deal. So the official state of the Super League right now is that it's on standby, and the sort of the big pushers of it, which were behind the scenes. I mean, the most famous one was Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid. He was it's been his dream for at least 20 years. He's always seen this as kind of like his.
And has he been the president
legacy.
That long?
He's been president since 1999, since 2000. Like he took over in the year 2000. And yeah, 2000, the summer of the year 2000, he won his first election. He was then there for 6 years. He resigned, and then he was gone for 3 years, and then he came back in 2009, and he's been president since. So he's been president for all of the last 20 years, except for 3 seasons in the middle of the 2000s. So it was him, Andrea Agnelli, who's the son of the patriarch Agnelli, who owns the Fiat car company, Ferrari, and crucially Juventus. His son, who's now the president of Juventus, was also one of the big proponents of it. And then the third one was Manchester United. And it's been less discussed than I think is appropriate, because Man United is owned by the Glazers, who own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they are probably would be the biggest beneficiaries of the Super League, because when the Glazers took over Man United, very controversial. It was incredibly controversial. Like it was so controversial that some fans broke away from Man United and started their own rival, Manchester United. It's actually kind of a funny story. But the Glazers realized, wait, holy shit, like I own the Bucks and I'm in the NFL every year. I don't, like, if I lose 16 games, nothing happens. My fans are annoyed, but like I still make the money, and I'm not gonna like get kicked out of the league. Whereas Man United, when the Glazers took over, which used to make the Champions League every year, now don't make the Champions League every year. They play this in the Europa League, which is a lesser tournament, and they're like, what the fuck? This is bullshit. What are you talking about? I bought the big team. I can be in the Champions League, and that's just not been the case. So they were the other kind of big team that pushed for this. But yeah, it's been remarkable. I mean, it's something that's always going to be a threat. It's always going to be there, because it does make financial sense for the owners of the big teams. It does make financial sense, because why would they want to share the pie with anyone else? I mean, they feel like they don't need those. They don't need the rest of the teams. They don't need. But right now, it looks like it's dead. And I think the backlash to it, which has been universal total, like no fans that I talked to, like the only fans who are like kind of for it are like kind of semi-casual fans, like
Mm-hmm.
the hardcore fans. Everyone is against it. The players are against it, the coaches are against it, like, everyone's against it. And I don't think they expected that level of backlash. And it's because soccer, I think, is a different type of sport than the NBA, and there's just much more of it's much deeper roots. It's just a different thing, you know. To turn it into a consumer product felt wrong to most people in their bones, and they rejected it.
Well, there's a lot of tradition there, and I'm not one to like malign American sports because I love football and basketball and all those other sports too. But you see, even with American fans of like BPL teams, the Premiership, they buy into the history and the identity. Not all of them, but like the ones who are like
it's part of what they sell.
Yeah, it's part of the idea, which I think is why you immediately saw this backlash. But just if you don't mind, Nando, just to catch everybody up, because some of our fans are going to be following this, and some of them probably have
no idea,
just brushed up. Could you just give us a kind of quick timeline of what happened this week and why it was such a huge event?
Okay, so on Sunday we started seeing reports that they were going to do the Super League again. The Super League has always been a rumor that's been around at least 10 years, that this was like a thing that could happen at some point. No one ever really thought it's one of those things that you never really think is actually going to happen, because it would be so seismic, but it's always kind of been there. And the reason why it happened this Sunday is like kind of an arcane thing, in that they were going to announce a new format for the Champions League on Monday. So the teams who did the Super League were like, okay, this is our chance. We're really struggling from the coronavirus. They haven't had fans in the stadium for over a year, which hurts their bottom line. I think the collective losses are something like $6 billion in European soccer because of the coronavirus. So like, this is our moment. This is our shot. We got to do this now. We got to fix our finances. We can't allow the new format of the Champions League to be announced without us announcing this breakaway league. And that's what it is. It's the teams getting together and saying, we do not compete with all, we are outside. We control our own thing. We just play against each other, and we're going to force everyone to watch us because we already have the largest fan bases. So that started leaking out on Sunday morning. And then Sunday night, we saw the official announcement of the Super League. And then that night, the president of Real Madrid went on a nationally televised show and spoke for 100 minutes, almost 2 hours. Wow. in a one-on-one interview, explaining the Super League, why they're doing it, saying that soccer is in a crisis and that this is the only way they can save it, and blah, blah, blah. On Monday, that's when the reaction started coming out. And you saw the governing bodies, UEFA, FIFA, saying that they were against it. You started seeing some players like James Milner, the captain of Liverpool, came out and said he was against it. Jurgen Klopp, the coach of Liverpool, came out and said he was against it. Pep Guardiola, the coach of Manchester City, came out and said he was against it. These are gigantic figures in the sport. Mm-hmm. But everyone kind of had this feeling on Monday that of resignation, that this was just that these clubs were too powerful. Mm-hmm. And if they really held the line, they were going to do it. Like, no one could stop them if they really wanted to. And that's when you started seeing fan backlash. Crucially, Chelsea fans in Stamford Bridge went out and protested at the stadium. All over England, there were kind of these big protests.
There were some pretty striking images around Anfield and in Liverpool too, of like red flags, like not Liverpool flags, like, socialist, communist kind of, militancy too. I mean, it really struck a chord with folks.
Totally. And I don't think, and the reaction from like, press commentators, like, former players, everyone was just against it because, like I said, they felt that they were being turned into a product, like, mm-hmm. I mean, which they kind of are in a way already, but like, again, it's the rejection that people feel in their bones to like being neoliberalized, to being turned into just like a consumer product in every single aspect of life. Like in certain ways, sports, like we want to keep some level of like this is still kind of an authentic thing.
I mean, when we talk about with Peter Limbaugh, we talk about commons enclosure, and really like these capitalists are every championship moment that you have with a team becomes something that accrues to their bottom line. Like the more a team wins, the more valuable that team is, and that goes to them. And fuck that. I think everybody has a natural, instinct that that's something being taken from them.
Yeah, and I think that the lesson here, I mean, from what you're talking about, Matt, is that clubs used to not be owned by rich capitalists the way they are now. This is a relatively new phenomenon, and the UK kind of turned Manchester United into like a publicly traded company, and things like that. Like, and that was really kind of the canary in the coal mine. But since then, Russian oligarchs, Roman Abramovich famously owns Chelsea. Gulf Petro oligarchs own Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, several other teams. And crucially, also American investors, American billionaires own Manchester United. They own Arsenal. They own Liverpool. They own AC Milan. They own Roma. They own a bunch of teams. And like you said, like what they do is they need to extract profit. I mean, this is what it is. They need to extract profit. So again, this is something that people were always kind of against, but it wasn't until this Super League creation, which really threatened the heart of why they love the sport, that there was this big kind of rejection to it. I mean, like I said, there's always been opposition to the Glazers in Manchester United. People really hate them and really hated that they took over their club. But this was really kind of where it became widespread.